Hey folks, welcome to Code and Concrete, where we share the latest trends and the stories of trailblazers in the built environment. We hope to gain some insight from our wide range of topics, such as real estate development and sustainability, or blockchain, artificial intelligence, and data. Joining us today is Jahangeer J. Ansari. Jay is a seasoned digital marketing director with over 15 years of experience in global business strategy and Web3 technologies. He has a proven track record of driving growth, having generated over $4 million in annual sales and managed marketing budgets up to $800,000 per campaign. Jay's expertise spans multiple industries, including AI, blockchain, and gaming. He holds an MBA in artificial intelligence from the University of Cumbria and is certified in blockchain and NFT technologies. Passionate about innovation, Jay excels in leading multicultural teams and implementing cutting-edge marketing strategies across diverse markets. Jay, you've got one fascinating biography about yourself. I mean, marketing, gaming, NFTs, and you're calling in from Hong Kong this morning. That's fantastic. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you. Thanks for giving me a wonderful, warm intro as well. And yeah, I'm super excited about your podcast and happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Well, it was nice that we got to meet in person at Hong Kong FinTech Week. You know, originally we were chatting back and forth on LinkedIn, and I knew that I was going to be on stage at FinTech Week. We got to explore Hong Kong. I mean, it was so great to, participate in some of the activities that they had afterwards,
Exactly.
going around the city and trying out different bars or just what... some of the larger names in the industry hosting these little events, Hong Kong Science and Technology Park. It was really fantastic.
Yeah, I think last year, FinTech Week, they did a great job integrating like all these events across the city. It was super nice to meet a lot of people, including yourself, all the experts coming into one city, having fun for a week-long event. So it was a great time to catch up with a lot of people you normally don't have access to. So I thank the FinTech team, the FinTech Week team, to arranging a really nice organization in terms of events, side events, the main attraction, and also funding a lot of startups as well.
Yeah, and something that they did really well was making the whole thing entertaining. To host a tech conference is one thing, but to actually get people excited and Token 2049 did the same thing as well, where the atmosphere was so unique. You had these activities going on, side events, people coming in from around the world, going out of their way to make sure that they were there in this point in time to be around other people, to hear speakers, and then to explore the activities. And this is something that I think ties into some of the specializations that you have in Web3, because in some ways, I try to treat Web3 the complete opposites of gaming, NFTs, and things that are trending right now. I try to pull away from that. It's very contrarian of how I look at the world and how our team talks about it. Like, we want it to be unsexy and uninteresting, but you get to bring an alternative perspective to the show, things that are going on in NFTs. So to add some context here, I guess I want to dive into, because you have 15 years of marketing experience. Let's just look at your background first. So, what led you to marketing in the first place?
Sure. I think I had an interest in business background. My dad was a businessman. He was a trader, and he was my original source of inspiration. So I just followed on his steps. And in terms of my education, I had a traditional education in international business. That's where I started my BBA. And when I graduated, I moved to Hong Kong and I started working in startups. So Hong Kong is a great city where you meet people from all over the globe, companies coming in with lots of new ideas, exploring new spaces. And I got in touch with an amazing community at Cyberport Hong Kong, and that's how I got into the startup tech space, where I worked for tech companies, e-commerce companies, and then fintech lately. So that's how I got my initial exposure into marketing. And being in the startup space, it's where you learn everything, right? You try to do everything on your own. You have a lot of responsibilities. You get to own what you do, and you take a lot of pride in what you do as well, right? So I get to learn from the best in Hong Kong. A lot of my peers and a lot of my managers were like one of the experts in terms of global marketing. And Hong Kong is a city where you're marketing to everyone outside of Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a very small city, right? So the majority of audiences, the majority of products that we marketed are for global audiences in different countries like US, UK, Australia, Asia Pacific, recently UAE, etc. So it gave me a lot of opportunities to do cutting edge stuff that you wouldn't be able to get in other countries, for example. So it gave me a lot of knowledge, hands-on experience in devising marketing campaigns, let's say, that are like really creative and working with amazing talents from all over the globe, etc. So I really thank the city and the cyberport ecosystem to providing a huge opportunity to learn and grow with these amazing companies here.
So was your first job out of college with a startup?
No, I think the first 2 years I was in the gemstones trade. That's where my dad was in. He was a trader, and I did work in a few gemstone company, but I was always doing marketing. I introduced social media marketing. It was a very new topic. Social media marketing was a new topic when I came in after graduating, and that's how I got into Facebook, Instagram, etc. All the social media marketing stuff. And then I moved into advertising. Advertising is a very important section for my career because that's a space that was newly developing, like Google Ads, Facebook Ads, uh, just to curate that. And it had a lot of analytical aspects as well. So that's how I got into data analytics, learned a lot about analytical tools, tracking, etc. User metrics, making sure you're hitting your KPIs, CACs, etc. And I kept adding each skill depending on where I moved on to. So after a few years in trading, I just moved. After 3 years, I think I moved into startup space already, which I naturally gravitated towards there because they were the right kind of people. They were looking for people like me who do marketing, and I had the right set of skills at that time. So I had an animation background as well, like graphic and animation. So I did a few UI UX projects back in the day for some banking companies, and it helped me connect with the right people in Hong Kong. And I immediately knew this is where I wanted to be, and then this is where I wanted to go with.
If you were to compare marketing, for in a corporate environment to a startup, and then, as we start to look at Web3, how marketing shifts from traditional Web2, which is all about buy this, buy that, to the more community-based. I mean, how do you compare all these different atmospheres or corporate or cultural settings when you're marketing? How have you seen this change, over the years?
Yeah, marketing is a very dynamic space. Every year it's changing, and you need to be able to keep up with the trends, right? That's what keeps me interested. So every year it's like learning something new. Every minute you're learning something new and adapting. And when I started in Web2 space, it was more like user acquisition focused roles. Marketing was mainly for user acquisition, but I think it slowly moved on to like a community focused, user focused. It's not just pushing brand narratives anymore. Usually in Web2 space, you build your own brand and you push your brand narratives. You educate people or your users on your brand, etc., and feed your brand values. But in the Web3 space, it almost took a completely different turn. Like users are more in control, in power now, rather than brands, and users get to dictate like what your brand value is. They decide like what is working in terms of products. Like if something is not working, they will just move out. And in order to be relevant in Web3 space, you have to listen very closely to the community. You have to be community driven, put community in the forefront, and then work your product around that community. So that's what I've been learning. Like last 5 years, I've been only focusing on Web3 space. And it's been great exploring new marketing tactics, building communities that are not just one way traffic, right? I mean, the big brands, big corporates, they have a huge education system. They're educating their user base on how to use the products. But in Web3 space, it's more of a two-way channel. So you're learning from your community as much as your community is learning from you and your product. So it's been very eye-opening in terms of how marketing is evolving.
Yeah, if we think about traditional marketing, we'll take a company like Coca-Cola, for example. You see the advertisements, you go and purchase that. And then actually, I'd compare this to like a pie chart, right? So we have three circles. You've got a big corporation like Coca-Cola. Then we'll put Coinbase on the top, right? So they're both corporations, but Coinbase is a little less community driven. It's not a startup by any means. It's certainly a giant company at this point, even though it's in the Web3 space. And so they have some similarities. Then you start to look at like a startup, and startups are going to have Discords. They're going to have Telegram group chats, and you're not going to see that with Coca-Cola or Walmart. You're not going to see a Walmart Discord where people come together and say, "Yeah, I think this is what we need. Can we request a feature?" Or there's not that two-way relationship between consumers and the producers of the software or the service, the company, I guess. And I think that's just so testament of Web3 culture in general, which is all about autonomy and ownership. We want to own this. And in that same way, we want to own the product. And this is why so many products, Web3 products, have their own tokens, because that's how people exemplify exert their ownership, a governance token, and they vote with their money in that way.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's the fundamental change or a positive feedback we got from Web3 using Web3 tokenomics, right? User bet with their money and they have a lot more ownership, like you mentioned, representation, as well as how they see our products worth, right? If they find something attractive, they use their tokens to vote for it and support it. If not, they move away from that. So it's very transparent. Blockchain being the transparent system as it is allowing a lot of these Web3 companies to have a direct relationship with users and see how they are interacting with their products, etc., while also preserving their privacy, user data, etc. And I think users now have a lot more say in what they are purchasing, what they want to, where they want to invest in, for example. So yeah, like you mentioned, it's a great example that you mentioned, like Pepsi, Coke. They are huge brands. They have huge advertising budgets. They can go reach millions of users at the same time. But when you come to Web3 space, it's completely different, right? It's not mass advertisement. It's more like reaching out to individual communities and bringing in people from different communities, etc., where they communicate through Discord or Telegram, etc., to find their own kind of people where they share what they like and what they don't like. And it's much more community driven now. And I think that's the way forward. Even big brands in the future will have like DAOs, etc. They will have their own tokenized version of their products. Uh, and that's where we see like the whole RWA space forming, right? It's just tokenization of physical as well as traditional financial assets. And it's just increasing every year, year over year. And that's why it's super interesting to talk about it. I think you know a lot more about RWA space also. So uh, that's an interesting trend that we are seeing in 2025 as well as moving on towards 2030. I think it's going to be a hot topic.
Well, in 2024, you were working for an RWA project, but before we get to that, I guess what was your story to getting into Web3 and then eventually starting to work for Web3 startups?
It's an interesting pathway I took because in startup space, I was working for fintech as well as tech companies. And in 2021, I had an opportunity to work with a video game publisher, 505 Games. And I worked with a really incredible manager, Mr. Thomas. He's been a great inspiration and for me as well. And what he allowed me to do is to research on blockchain, and I was doing my MBA in AI as well at that time. AI wasn't a big thing at that time, but I had my own personal interests in AI, and I was doing a part-time MBA with the University of Cumbria while working in Hong Kong. And my manager, he gave me an opportunity to explore NFTs. NFTs were just popping out. It was 2021, the crazy NFT boom, right? And being a video game publisher, they wanted to explore new ideas. So I did like a whole year of research for them. And that's how I got into blockchain space. I did study. I did a lot of courses, diplomas, etc., just to get myself acquainted with blockchain technology, the fundamentals. Once I had that, I did started working exclusively with Web3 projects. And Singularity Net was a huge opportunity for me as well. They are an AI-driven company. They are building basically a decentralized version of AI, and they are empowering communities to create their own nodes, provide a decentralized version of compute. So that's I met Marcello. He was the CEO of Singularity Net, Singularity DAO, which is a DAO version of Singularity Net. And I was doing a research on a lot of DAO and how AIs could help improve that. That was the thesis I was doing for my MBA, and I based it out of Singularity DAO. And it gave me a huge exposure to the world of how AIs could play a vital role for the next 10 to 20 years. And I had a lot of good connections in the Web3 space who are like pioneers in the AI space. They have dedicated their whole life, like Dr. Ben Gertzel. He's been researching AI for his entire life, entire career, right? So it's been great working with those people and to learn like what their vision of AI is like so much bigger than what ChatGPT or what we have right now. So it gave me an outlook on where AIs and businesses are financial tech and how people trade and e-commerce is going to change everything. They gave me a open window, and I think that's how I got my exposure, and there's no going back to it.
So in the past year, you were working at an RWA company. Was this the first real world asset startup that you had worked with?
That's true. That's true. I helped a company called FU Capital. So they were focused mainly on traditional finance assets, especially in loans, and they were trying to tokenize it and bringing it, digitizing it into RWA space and bringing it with blockchain technology. What what was very interesting about this company is that they are a real Web2 company. They are a traditional Web2 finance company, and they are working in the loan and debt space already. And they have built a huge company in the Web2 space. They're called Escated. You can go find it. It's a European company that does secondary financial market. Secondary financial markets are common in Europe, not so common in Asia. It's very common for you, I think. But in some parts of Asia, we don't have secondary finance market. It's mainly handled by the banking and banking companies, especially exclusively. So it was very nice to see like what are the options that are available globally and what they are trying to build. Their vision is so much bigger, and I think it's a natural evolution, like where finance and finance tech is going towards.
Yeah, that's one of the things that has stood out about finance institutional adoption and a lot of the companies that are having success. They already had a presence in Web 2. And so they didn't have to reinvent the wheel. They're not playing with imaginary money. They're taking something that already exists in the world. And this to me is why RWAs is going to be the number one use case for blockchain in the coming year. Maybe tied with payments because Bitcoin is just so prominent and stable coins make a lot of sense. But even then, RWAs are heavily intertwined there because what are you using stable coins for? Usually it's making purchases or investments of some sorts. And I think that what's so often forgotten in the Web3 space, as much as people want to create entirely new economies and throw away the banks, it's not possible. A couple of startup founders are not able to disrupt a $1 quadrillion industry that has ruled humans since the beginning of time, right? Finance. So the companies that are thinking about this the right way are saying what already exists in the real world and how can we make the technology come to us, whether that's supply chain, private credit, real estate, and trying to, seek out the technological solutions as opposed to a lot of founders who have the technological solution and they're trying to find someone who's going to buy this, going out there and trying to find problems for their solution. And RWAs, again, perfect example. I mean, like you said, you're talking about secondaries, or you're talking about, companies just having an established presence in finance already. I think that's how we see adoption widespread.
That's true. Like you mentioned, in the early stages of Web3, people had an assumption that they are trying to replace the entire traditional finance system with a new tech, etc. But as we are maturing, as we are growing, I think it's pretty clear that Web3 is an enabler for the financial system that we have, and it's just going to improvise and improve the existing system. And it's all about cost reduction, efficiency, and automation, right? And these are the three main areas that we are mainly focused on. And I think it's going to help. It's going to enable the existing financial system the most. And that's why Hong Kong is a great example. So Hong Kong has a super well-structured financial infrastructure, and it's embracing the blockchain technology already. You can see banks like HSBC, Standard Chartered already using blockchain technologies for their existing systems. It's the adoption is already happening, and all these startups, they are providing valuable insights. Each let's say each startup is solving its own piece of puzzle, and it's all going to add up into a bigger ecosystem in terms of bigger global financial market. So that's where I see it. I see RWA space making a huge impact. I think I would say RWAs are the most impactful outcomes of the blockchain technology so far. And in terms of monetary value, you can already see institutions like BlackRock, for example. They are one of the biggest asset managers in the world, and they are tokenizing at least 10 trillion worth of their own asset. So it's just one institution is like 10 trillion. And I think some statistics say that by 2030, we can have like 16 trillion worth of assets on chain. And it all comes under the big umbrella of RWA. So it's interesting to see a pathway already, but lots of governments forming regulatory framework on how these integrate with the traditional finance system. I think Hong Kong, Singapore, Dubai, they all have been doing great progress. And I think a lot of new countries are adopting as well. Even in, I don't want to specify regions, but a lot of traditional regions which are very famous for their financial infrastructure are adopting, and they are doing their own research. They are doing DAOs. They are doing establishing legal entities that would make sure everything, the transition or the intersection makes perfect sense for the existing system.
Yeah, I think RWAs are what NFTs wanted to be. And NFTs, if I go back to what I was saying, where you can't just create an entirely new economy. And that's what NFTs wanted to become, where they said, forget about, let's take the apes, for example, or Bored Apes. Forget about how art is created or how art is valued or what a security is or how people invest. Let's just start mass producing this digital artwork as an NFT. And it was a complete mess. And people moved away from the industry rapidly once they saw how not disruptive, but distasteful the entire scenario was. Now you fast forward, well, smart contracts and non-fungible tokens and tokenized items and tokenomics, well, these are still here. They're still being applied. And now the institutions are taking it seriously because they're applying it to something in the real world. They're saying, why don't we take real estate, private credit, life insurance, equities, bonds, things that function now, and see if we can realize the operational efficiency, the transparency, the automation. If people aren't talking about those three things when they're mentioning blockchain, I don't know that they really understand the technology, because blockchain is not so that you can overthrow the government, although, decentralization might give you the impression that it could be used for that. It's about removing intermediaries. It's about cutting down, how much human trust we have to put into a system and how much inherent trust is already in it, because it's programmable, it's fault proof, it's not subject to manipulation. And that's, as we're explaining here, that's the big differentiator, RWA versus NFTs.
That's true. Like you mentioned, like Bored Apes, Yacht Club, they did a huge impact in the market. They brought NFTs to the world audience, right? They gave exposure to what blockchain can do. I think they did a great job creating a community and having a community-driven approach. So they are a great example. But I think a lot of other projects started using NFTs for a completely wrong reason. And you knew just by looking into 2023, what happened, 99% of Web3 NFT projects failed because the goal was not clear. People thought that digital ownership had its own innate value, which is not the case. So it's all about the underlying asset, it has to have some kind of value to hold a monetary value. You can't just create art out of thin air, for example. And but we have learned like what these blockchains, NFTs, or fungible and non-fungible tokens can bring to the table, right? And we're just going to translate what worked and take the positives that out of all these 2 years and applying it to the financial sector that we have right now. I think there's a huge possibility. There's a huge positive takeaways that we can bring into the current financial system, and that's where RWAs are huge at the moment because they are tokenizing like real world assets, like real assets, and they're not creating anything out of thin air. It's just enabling and making sure the security, making sure the value ownership is all on chain. And it's just providing value to both the traditional system as well as the Web3 ecosystem.
To segue a little bit, an interesting crossroads of RWAs, Web3, and what I guess I would see as a fictitious economy is gaming. Now, in the typical Web2 gaming economy, I mean, you're buying the game, there's purchases that you're making. Obviously, people perceive value. And now you're seeing, and we've seen for the past few years, that Web3 has seeped into the gaming industry, whether it's blockchain-based games or you receive some sort of rewards. I don't have any exposure to the Web3 gaming industry. So I want to ask you, where are you seeing RWAs, NFTs, and decent use cases of the technology being used in gaming? Ideas or outputs in games and products that are actually innovative.
I think gaming has always been in the forefront of tech, right? It's always about compute. It's always about graphical clarity and improved GPU power, etc. And it's gaming has always had like digital versions of trophies, reward systems, points, etc. This has been going on for decades now, right? And now what Web3 is doing is giving users or players an ownership, uh, digital ownership of what they are getting on games. For example, when I was a gamer early on, I used to, like, for example, I can say PlayStation is a great example, right? PlayStation is a huge brand with 123 million users across the globe. They all have games. They all play games, and in these games, you can earn like a virtual trophy, for example. If you are playing a car race and you win a few races, you get a trophy. It's is a digital representation of an achievement that you have achieved in the game. So what Web3 enables is that you can own that trophy, for example. Maybe in the future, when you're earning these trophies, it could be a token in your wallet, and you can take that token to a different game. For example, interoperability is going to be it's going to play a huge role in gaming in the future. And what I see right now is companies like Animoca brands, you might have known, they're huge in Hong Kong. They have been in the forefront of Web3 gaming, and I think they will lead the Web3 gaming sector for the next 10 years. And we're also seeing like traditional gaming companies come into the space. For example, Sony. Not a lot of people are noticing this, but Sony has been heavily investing in Web3 because they have 100 million plus users, right? All these people have data. Like they have a huge database of user data, where what games they play, what games they own. These are all in traditional system. all this can be shifted to blockchain because it's much more efficient, much more transparent, much more secure as well. And that's what Sony has been counting on. They have their own blockchain called Sonium, and Sony has been slowly uh, investing in the Web3 ecosystem. So they already have a blockchain. They released a testnet a few months back, and it has been a huge success already. What they can do is they can integrate their existing user base in the Web2 world. You can say they can bring it into Web3 space. Everything is blockchain underneath. You don't have to know. The gamers might not know what's the underlying tech,
Right.
but I think they have a huge incentive to adopt it because it's cost reduction as well. So as a big corporate company, it's very valuable for companies like Sony, Microsoft, and all the other gaming giants. And I think we're going to see a slow move towards the tokenization of a lot of in-game assets that you can own. For example, you might have heard about games like Counter-Strike or Diablo. These are games where you can own certain very rare items, and gamers have usually found a way to trade these items. So there's an in-game marketplace, or they create an online community where they can trade these in-game items for a monetary value. And that's just going to be adopted into the Web3 space. It's just what the user wants. And I think Web3 is an enabler of that ecosystem. So it's going to be improving as we go.
But in that case, if marketplaces already exist in Web 2 games, what value is the blockchain contributing, or what is the larger vision for blockchain in these marketplaces?
I think interoperability is one of the key terms that I wanted to focus on because in current gaming space, everything is controlled by the gaming companies, right? Like Activision, Microsoft, PlayStation, Sony. And what happens is if I own a game in Steam, I don't own anything. I just own a right to their game.
I see.
Meaning it's an intellectual property. You don't own that intellectual property. You're just having license to access. And anything you earn inside the game is actually still an ownership of that company. You don't own any of it. You just have an access to it. You log into it and you log out. As soon as you log out, everything is their own assets, right? But in Web3 space, that's slowly going to change. When you log out, you still own the gaming assets. Maybe you build a huge house inside a metaverse game, and you can own that. You can take that, and Web3 is going to be so interoperable that you can take that asset and put it into a completely different game. For example, say you're taking a PlayStation game asset or a beautiful car inside a PlayStation game and going and playing on Xbox, for example, which is unheard of and would never happen in the real world, in the Web2 world. But with Web3, it is possible. And I think companies are starting to embrace that as well. And it's giving more power to the gamers, etc.
What would the financial incentive be for the game producers or the gaming systems? Is it that they're getting a piece of every transaction?
Exactly. So you can charge them with a transactional cost, or they're still using your game platform, right? You need more people to come in. So imagine 100 million of PlayStation users coming into Xbox, for example. Comparatively, PlayStation is a much more bigger brand with a bigger user base. So of course, Microsoft wants to access to this user base, right? So if it is interoperable, people would jump between different imaginary brawlers or consoles, just to put it simple. And I think that is going to improve the gaming ecosystem. It's going to grow globally, and I think it's a great idea to have an open gaming environment. Like,
Yeah, and I have to admit, gaming and Web3 and the crossroads of these aren't things that I've thought about prior to us talking, but the more that you say it out loud, the more overlap you see in like just the first principles of each item. So gaming is all about people from around the world coming together. Maybe they're forming teams or they have a common objective. Well, that's community right there.
exactly.
Same thing happening in Web3, where people come together, they have a common objective, they want to see the world the same way. And then you have this really interesting interlacing of those concepts. It completely makes sense to me why these are compatible. And I have to admit, I was a bit of a trophy hunter back when I played games, 4, 5, 6 years ago now. And if I could actually be rewarded for that and there was value, well, I probably would have been a little bit more productive of my time, because at this point, they're on a PlayStation account that is 6 years lost. And I had a whole lot of trophies. So that would have been great to monetize.
Exactly.
Looking at marketing, I don't have a smooth segue here, but I do want to ask about marketing, because one of the things that's interesting right now, we're on opposite sides of the world, but you've managed multicultural, international marketing teams and campaigns, and to me, that's just fascinating. I guess what ties it together is I'm proactively, if we're talking about community, trying to build a community around the world. And whether it's guests on this podcast, people interacting with my posts on LinkedIn, or the ability to have enough trust between strangers that I can send them a message and say, I'm in town in your country. Do you want to meet up? What are some of your secrets to running successful marketing campaigns, getting people on the same? Let me ask one question at a time. Let's just start with successful marketing campaigns. What's your secret?
I'd say marketing is a very dynamic space. As long as you're focused on what your product is and what your audiences are, it's basically trying to convey a message and unite people together in common vision, right? So marketing helps you connect and find these people and connect these people at a common cause, right? And I think that's what I've been doing so far. Like, really, a company or a startup has a product, and their goal is always the same. The goal is to find the right audience. And as a marketing director, my job is to help them facilitate that, help them find the right channels, right mediums, whether it's video, interactive, images, text, long form, short form. There's so much. And using all these tools, trying to find the right way, cost effective way, for example. There's cost is always going to be the main point of marketing initiatives. How do you find the most effective way to reach your target audience has been the goal in all of our my previous roles, right? And I think marketing gives you a huge exposure to what people are like from all over the globe. And you're trying to learn each cultures and how they consume content, how they are interacting, how they are learning, for example. And it's more like you're trying to understand human behavior. You have to study a lot of psychology, human behavior, and what makes people click, etc. So that's a very interesting part of me that I was always naturally curious about. And that helped me a lot with marketing because I was naturally interested in how to make a website click, what makes someone open an email, for example, You can do that in a quantitative way in marketing. So that brings a lot of quantitative approach to human behavior, for example. So that's what interests me, and I think it's improving year over year. And with Web3, it's exactly the same. We just have a lot more data now. We can see exactly what they are interested in without having invading their privacy. You don't have to know exactly who your user is, but you can track like what they are doing, what they like, what they don't like, and depending on their likes, you can provide them the right content, for example. So that's what I've been exploring recently.
At the beginning of your answer, you had mentioned vision, which is what my second question was going to be. I mean, marketing can be pretty complex because internally inside the team, a lot of people can have different visions, how they view the brand and how they want to deliver the product. Hey, we should focus on this service, this value. We should word it this way. It's all about features. No, it's all about how people actually get something out of the product. And then you have a very complex entity that we call the market, which is really composed of thousands, tens of thousands, or millions of personalities and people who see the world in a unique way. And marketing is such an intriguing challenge where you're trying to, because you want one vision and you're trying to see what resonates with the most people outside the world, even though people are so different. I think this is almost like a leadership question combined with a marketing question. How do you bring people together, whether it's inside the team or your target market, under a brand, under a vision? How do you decide on that? How do you feel confident that this is the message we want? You know, from your experience, what's it been, that journey to defining good marketing?
It's a really interesting question, and it's a huge, like you mentioned, it's a huge part of our leadership team, right? And I think in every startup space, like it's a huge part of your management team itself as a whole to bring your vision ideas into actionable items and then going after your target audience. To do that, you should have a really good team. What I usually do is I work really close with the founders, whether it's a financial fintech company, gaming company, or it's a e-commerce company. It doesn't matter. But you have to work very closely with the founders and what their vision is and what they are going after, how they envision their brand to be. I try to understand where they want to be in, let's say, 5 years. Anything over 3 years is very hard to predict, but we try to set like 5 year goals and see this. Okay, this is your product. This is who we are targeting, and this is where we want to be in 5 years. And I document these in detail. We have like marketing strategies, blueprints, brand guidelines. We create these. I think the first 3 months in any startup, like I would purely focus on these items, like creating a brand outline, guideline, and making sure you have the right tone, right voice, etc. Because every uh, product would be completely different, and one startup might be working on multiple products. For example, I was working for an RWA company. They had a B2B side of the business and as well as B2C side. And they were also working on some DAOs, etc. So each product has its own tone. For a B2B, you have to be very professional, formal. And for a B2C, you have to be a little bit casual and not using too much industry jargons, etc. You have to simplify it. And to a DAO, it's almost like you have to be as down to earth as possible and make sure you're listening instead of pushing ideas. So it's all completely different, and you have to have these, blueprint of your sort. And your main job as a marketing director or a lead is to make sure your team, whether it's content writer, whether it's social media managers or graphic designers, your goal is to give them a framework to work on. Say, okay, this is what we are, this is our brand, and making sure that everything aligns together in a unified way, because you're working with teams in Web3 space generally. You're working with teams all across the globe, and in crazy different time zones. And it's all about communicating with them and making sure every single content that you put out aligns with your brand. That's the main goal, like making sure you're managing this in order to make your brand successful. I think that's where a lot of startups struggle as well, like finding the right balance, because startups are always trying to adapt the market, like you mentioned, because market is always going to be dynamic. And they struggle to find market fit, etc. And they have to pivot. Even though if you are pivoting and trying to adapt, you should have your own brand, and you should know what value you are bringing in before creating the product itself. So that will help you stay focused.
Yeah, brand is so interesting. And I think that a lot of startups and their founders have an identity crisis fundamentally. And part of that stems from that startups don't know really what brand is and how to define it. I used to have Apple's original branding guidelines that they developed in the early 70s. And I can't remember it exactly. I was going to look it up real briefly, but I didn't want to distract myself. But it's very, very unique. And they wanted to express themselves. They wanted to be seen as innovative, which is one thing. What are the words that we're using? How do we talk? And then the next was, how do people actually feel when they touch our product? Do they feel inspired? Do they feel like an innovator? And you see this a lot. For example, in American hipster culture, to sit with a MacBook at a cafe means you're working on something unique and interesting. Maybe you're an unrecognized artist, or you're a founder, you're an innovator, someone who goes against the grain. And even if you look at Apple's earliest marketing, like their 1984 commercial, I mean, this when it first came out, people said this is the worst commercial that's ever been created. And now people look back on it and they say, wow, this is so fascinating. It was so disruptive and unique. And Apple does this a lot. Here's to the crazy ones is a good example, where they said, we want people to own our products and feel like they're changing the world. So there was that. And then some of the more tactile things, just the overall quality. We make the best products. A lot of people say this when they open the box for the iPhone. Just the slick, smooth movements of the lid coming off the rest, and then inside you pull up the phone, and I just got a new charging cable, and they have real easy unwrap. Like these are all brand things, because Apple isn't. They're not marketing the laptop per se, but what you can do with it and how you feel, how powerful you feel, how unique, the minimalist, almost modernist or postmodernist setting that you cast yourself into when you hold one of their products. And this, I mean, Apple's such an easy example. Now try to do that with every single company or your new emerging startup that is trying to get out to market and has different products. You don't have market fits, so you have no way. It is, marketing is an art. I mean, Jay, you're an artist in your own right, to be talking about marketing and trying to apply this to a chaotic environment like startups.
Thank you, Matthew. I think that's high praise coming from you as well. And I think, yeah, like you mentioned, Apple is world class, right? World class for its marketing campaigns, and it's been taught in almost every universities in the world, like as an example of what a brand campaign is, etc. And I really like the fact that you mentioned how their products make their users feel. So it's emotional connection as well. It's very hard to make, especially in startup space where you're just trying to make your product sustain or trying to make it through the runway, etc. And that's place where a lot of startups, especially in Web3 startups, what they feel is to create that authentic connection, which is the main cause for distrust or loss of trust in your product, etc. To create that trust, you need to focus on very tiny things that makes one comfortable using your product, etc. So that's where all the branding elements come in as well. And all the successful companies that are existing in Web3 space are the ones that have built that brand or built that trust. So the companies that are trying to overlook marketing, usually they take a long, either they have a really great product or they fail to capture that their target audience. So it's a very tricky play. Marketing plays a crucial role, and it's going to be there. It's going to just scale up with in years.
Yeah. So as we wrap up here and think about the coming years, what are some of your predictions for Web3 and RWA in 2025? And if you want, this isn't investment advice, but what do you speculate Bitcoin is going to hit by, or its peak, in 2025 or end of year?
That's a big ask. Any kind of prediction is very tough, right? Okay. Let me see. What was the first question again about
RWAs in Web3 in 2025?
RWAs? Okay. So I think 2025 to 2030, I think RWAs are going to play a significant role, right? You've already seen huge institutional adoptions, and I think a lot of traditional assets will have access to a digital version of them. And it also plays a crucial role in where AI is coming along. You might have seen AI agents, the term you want to look at for 2025 and moving forward, because we have LLMs, perfected the LLMs. They are open source, so everyone has access to it. You can run it locally or through cloud, etc. Now you have AI agents who are going to make use of that and take that. And how that plays into RWA space is that these agents are going to be running DAOs. They're going to be helping with marketing. For example, you'll see like KOLs who are AI agents promoting your product autonomously. And you'll see a lot of marketing tools, because marketing is mostly 90% is analytical. And these analytical data, I think AI agents will be able to crunch it in a few moments. Like if you give me your product, if you tell me your audience, I'll be able to give you a 6-month plan much faster than I was able to do it a couple of years back. And I think with RWA space, I think we are getting a lot more data, a lot more transparency, and it's really going to help like in marketing, as well as in terms of how the Web3 space is evolving as well. And yeah, that's where I was going. And the second question you asked was about...
Well, you could say Web3 in general. RWAs, I think, are going to be the prominent topic in Web3. There might be some innovation in DePIN. If we're talking about artificial intelligence and compute, decentralized physical infrastructure is a natural follow-up, just because we don't have enough energy or data centers for all that we're about to require of, for example, these AI agents. We can talk about adding AI agents everywhere. Building has in the roadmap, and we're already working on it, how you can use AI agents in properties, but it's going to be extraordinarily demanding of resources. Sure. And so we're thinking, well, maybe we can start equipping properties with solar panels and black boxes and local data centers so that they can run these AI agents off of their own resources instead of going to AWS where it's going to be 4 times the price.
Sure. I
So
think Ethan,
AI,
it is
yeah,
going
Ethan.
to facilitate all of these requirements. Like you mentioned, the requirement for AI compute is huge, right? And like even building, you guys are working on data infrastructure, right? I think it's going to empower people to use resources that they have in-house and contribute to deepen, hopefully connecting into a huge compute system. And a lot of projects are already doing it very successfully. And the concept is successful. You can build a decentralized network instead of having a centralized AWS server, which is very cost prohibitive.
Well, my final question, Bitcoin price prediction. If you had to guess, what's it going to hit in
Okay.
2025?
Okay.
200K?
Don't quote me. Quote me, or it's not financial advice, but I think we still haven't seen the peak yet. We've hit 109K, for example, 108K right now. And I think we will hit 200K is the target goal for this bull run. I think we will hit somewhere between 180 to 200 before 2026.
Awesome. I hope so. I should put my life savings in Bitcoin right now. And
No financial advice.
yeah, right. Awesome. Well, I
It's
mean, Jay, this is
volatile, right? Yeah.
it is. And some are even say it's going to pull back, quite a bit. And that's when all the latecomers and the institutions will buy up again. And then we'll get our bull run.
Yeah. Always
Memo,
expect 40% pullback.
yeah, right. I was just looking at that chart. I think like 38% is the exact number that it tends to pull back every cycle.
That's true.
Well, nonetheless, this has been a fantastic conversation covering marketing, Web3, DeFi gaming, and I mean branding. There's just so much overlap in these areas. These are big interests of mine, generally speaking. I'm not much of a gamer, but I had that little revelation mid-episode. It's really just community and gamifying processes, whether it's an actual game or if you just want to make something rewarding, where people get something out of contributing to your product, to your service, to your DAO, to your community. It makes sense. So I might have to revisit, some of those gamification concepts, courtesy of the insight that you provided here.
Definitely. Thank you so much for taking the time today. Like, it was a really enjoyable conversation we had. And I think I had some revelations as well. Like, I'm going through like what I've been doing and what I want to do in the future. And it's going to be great for the users who are listening to your podcast. Hopefully someone finds it insightful.
I think many people will. And so I'd like to thank everyone who joined us today on Code and Concrete, and look forward to the episodes that we've got coming out in 2025. We should have over 100 speakers. It's going to be super, super exciting. If you enjoyed the conversation, make sure to rate or like on whatever streaming platform you are on. Follow. That's how you're going to help us grow, and we'll get our community. Maybe we should even start a Code and Concrete DAO. That could be interesting, but it's ahead of ourselves. So Jay, thank you again. Hope to see you in Hong Kong in person again soon.
Thank you so much, Matthew.
All right. Take care now.